Keeper of the stone, Heti woke before dawn, not to a rooster-esque crow, which no one in these parts ever heard, but to the familiar ache in his shoulders that arrived with the first ray of sunlight climbing over the eastern hills. He was 15 years old, and for 3 years now he had worked on the construction of the great tomb of Pharaoh Khufu. He rose from his mat in the cramped stone house at the edge of the workers' village that sprawled at the foot of the Giza plateau. Beside him, curled up, slept his younger brother Sabik. Their mother was already bustling by the hearth, preparing flatbreads from barley flour and pouring beer into clay cups. Simple but hearty food, without which one could not last a whole day under the blazing sun. Today they were bringing a new shipment of stone from Aswan, his father said, coming into the house. His hands were covered in calluses, his back bent from years of labor, but his eyes shone with pride. Pink granite. It will go toward lining the burial chamber, Heti nodded. He knew that his father, Panu, was one of the senior stonemasons, a man whose name was known even to the scribes who kept the workers' records. It was his father who taught him to read the lines in stone, to hear where a hidden crack lay, and to understand what kind of hammer blow would not waste the precious rock. Stepping outside, Heti squinted at the bright light. Before him, as every morning, rose the pyramid, a colossal mountain of limestone reaching toward the sky. Work had been underway for almost 15 years now, and the structure had climbed so high that its summit was lost in the morning haze. Thousands of people swarmed over its slopes like ants on the body of a sleeping giant, some hauling enormous blocks on wooden sledges, others dressing the edges of stones, still others carrying water and food. Heti, called the foreman in a short, sturdy man whose voice had gone permanently hoarse from years in the sun. Your crew is working the north side today, on the 20th course. Hurry, before the heat sets in. The 20th course was already considerable height. Heti climbed with his companions up a temporary ramp of packed earth and broken stone that wound around the growing pyramid in a spiral. These ramps were dismantled and rebuilt again and again as the structure rose, and this work was hardly less exhausting than laying the stone itself. Below, at the base, the runners of enormous sledges creaked. Dozens of men, bound with ropes, hauled a limestone block weighing a good ton. One of the overseers poured water in front of the runners to reduce friction against the scorching sand, a trick taught to them by the old man who had worked on the pyramid of the current pharaoh's father. And 1, and 2, shouted the head of the hauling crew, setting the rhythm. Heti paused for a moment, watching this scene. He often thought that surely no one in the world, not in the lands of Kush to the south, nor in the distant country between two rivers that traveling merchants spoke of, had ever seen anything like it. An entire city had gathered here by the desert to build the pharaoh a staircase to heaven, to the god Ra. Don Tija stand there gawking, left his friend Amini, nudging him in the side. Or do you think the gods will haul the stone themselves? Heti smiled and returned to work. His task was not to haul blocks. That required the considerable strength of grown men. But, together with other boys his age, to bring tools, water in leather skins, and copper chisels to the master craftsmen, who fitted the stones together with such precision that, it was said, not even a knife blade could be slipped between the blocks. By midday the sun had turned the plateau into a scorching griddle. Work paused for a while, not because anyone pitied the slaves, as distant descendants would later imagine, having heard too many Greek tales, but because the people working here were not slaves at all. They were free farmers, stone cutters, and craftsmen called up for labor duty during the season when the Nile flooded, when the fields lay underwater anyway and could not be worked. The state fed them, paid them in bread, beer, onions, and fish, and in this labor, hard, but meaningful, people saw not slavery but service to their god king and, through him, to all of Egypt. In the shade of a linen awning, Heti sat beside his father, chewing a flatbread. "Father, why does the pharaoh need such an enormous tomb?" he asked, as he had asked many times before, knowing the answer would sound a little different each time, gathering new details. Panu looked thoughtfully at the colossal mass casting its dense shadow over the desert. "The pharaoh is not merely a man, my son. He is the living embodiment of Horus, and after death he will become Osiris. His ka, his life force, must find a resting place worthy of a god. The pyramid is a staircase by which his soul will ascend to the stars, to the eternal companions of Ra. As long as this mountain of stone stands, all of Egypt will stand with it, because the pharaoh's spirit will watch over us, the living, from his eternal dwelling. And when will it be finished? I don't know if I'll live to see it. His father smiled, though there was sadness in the smile. Perhaps you will, perhaps your children will. Things like this are not built for one lifetime, Heti. We lay stone that our grandfather never saw, and that our great-grandson will. These words settled deep in Heti's heart. He looked at his companions, tired, covered in dust, but unbroken, and suddenly felt not exhaustion but something like he was part of something that would outlast not only himself, but even the memory of him and his children. In the afternoon, work resumed with renewed force. By evening Heti's crew had finished fitting another course of casing stones, the very ones that, thousands of years later, would be stripped away by time and by man, but which for now gleamed white in the sun, smooth as polished glass, cut from the fine limestone of Torah. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, painting the desert in shades of ochre and crimson, Heti looked up at the pyramid one last time that day. From this height the whole workers' town was visible, the bakeries where bread was baked day and night for thousands of laborers, the breweries, the workshops where coppersmiths repaired tools, the cattle pens, whose meat also fed the builders. He could see the Nile glinting silver in the distance, and barges loaded with stone gliding along the canal dug specially to bring granite from Aswan and finer limestone from the quarries on the far bank of the river. Descending the ramp with his weary companions, Heti suddenly thought of the man for whom all of this was being built, Pharaoh Khufu, whom he had never seen up close, but whose will, like an invisible hand, had directed the labor of tens of thousands of people for a decade and a half now. It was strange to think that this distant, almost divine ruler and he, an ordinary boy from the workers' village, were bound together by a single thread. The stone his own hands helped lay into the foundation of eternity. At home, his mother was already waiting with supper. Sabik, a little taller now than the year before, had also begun going to the construction site, carrying water. The whole family, like thousands of other families across Egypt, was part of a great undertaking whose meaning stretched far beyond any single human life. That night, lying on his mat and listening to the distant howl of jackals in the desert, Heti thought not of the ache in his back or the calluses on his palms. He thought of his father's words, of stone laid down for great-grandsons, and of the mess already rising somewhere above, out over the desert, a structure destined to stand for thousands of years, bearing witness to people whose names would be forgotten but whose labor would remain carved into the rock forever. He did not know, could not have known, that 4,500 years later, people from all over the world would stand at the foot of this pyramid, heads tilted back, trying to understand how it had ever been built without machines. He did not know that his own name would vanish into the depths of time along with the names of tens of thousands of builders just like him. But as he drifted off to sleep, Heti felt a strange, almost intangible peace. Whatever happened to him, the stone he had helped raise that day would remain standing, solid, eternal, reaching toward the stars. And the pyramid did remain standing.